Hey everybody, final thoughts time for Aeon's End, Legacy of Gravehold. Although before I get to that, please remember this was a paid Kickstarter preview. And with that out of the way, folks, it should come as no surprise that my wife Jen and I love this. We have always loved Aeon's End. Aeon's End is in my top 30 games of all time, considering all the wonderful expansions and the previous Legacy. Aeon's End Legacy 1 has just given us so much enjoyment. This game is so influential and so impactful for us. We have played very few games as many times as we've played Aeon Ends with all the coverage I've given it over the years. It's funny, this is a cooperative fantasy adventure deck builder. And probably the single most unique thing about it is how much control you have over your deck, because almost every other deck builder on the market, after your deck is empty and you have to draw more cards, you take your discard pile, shuffle it up, and then put it back and continue. So you can never be quite sure what your deck is going to give you. Aeon's End says no. Take your discard pile, flip it over, and put it back over here. So the order you discard cards in determines the order you get to draw them later. And that adds so much depth to the gameplay, so much long-term strategizing of trying to get the right cards together in your deck so they'll both come up at the same time. And so much of the game leverages that design because of the way cards interact with each other in your deck. It has always been great, and Aeon's End Legacy of Gravehold is full of more greatness. Oh, and I was just saying, that one key element that has always made this system so wonderful is so ingrained in us now that every time we play a new deck builder, the first thing my wife says is, right, okay, so is this one of the ones where we don't have to shuffle our discard pile? And I keep telling her, no, honey, there's only one of those, just Aeon's End. Nobody else does it. That's not true. Ryan Lockett did it with a game, and I think there's a couple others as well, but it's so rare, and that's a shame because it's so good. And, if there's one other hallmark that Aeon's End has always had going for it, it is breadth. So much content, and it is perpetually mind-boggling to me how the developers have been able to come up with new twists on bosses and characters and cards, constantly reinventing themselves, coming up with new things. And Legacy of Gravehold, well, this is the game that takes it be further than they've ever been before. Look at all this stuff that comes with it. There are, I believe, over 20 playable characters in this game. And all but a couple of them are completely brand new. There's a few, I believe, 2 or 3 of them that are just kind of revamped versions of earlier iterations of them. But all the other ones have completely new functionality. And then look at all these bosses we're gonna fight. And all of these bosses, minus 3 of them. I think there's 12 or 13 bosses, if I recall correctly, and 2 or 3 of them cannot be used after you finish the Legacy campaign. So even if you don't care about Legacy and storytelling and putting stickers and all that stuff, you could just get this game, immediately open all the envelopes, just take everything out, and you have got the biggest Aeon's End drop you have ever seen. More content assembled in one box than has ever been put out before. It is incredible. And all the more so because this is not just resting on laurels. This is still coming up with new and interesting versions of playable cards. All these new cards that can go into the shop. All these new special cards for all these new heroes. All of these cards for all of these new bosses with constantly fresh and interesting. Like if you watch the run-through I did, fighting 2 bosses at once, each one working independently. And you know what? It's not only all this breadth of content and new experiences. I mean, look at all these new tokens and new types of breaches that are available and all of it. It's really interesting new approaches to Legacy gameplay as well. I should say, first of all, I don't want to spoil anything about the story other than to say I found it, having finished the whole campaign, incredibly timely. For the world at large and for the board game industry as well. The themes that this game is exploring are front and center in our world. And this reminds me a lot of classic Star Trek. Or even modern Star Trek. But the idea of using science fiction, or in this case fantasy, to explore real world issues that we face today, while still having just a grand old rousing adventure. This game does that wonderfully, and the narrative is key to that. I found it really very, very meaningful. I choked up a couple times when I was having to, there was actually one time where I said, honey, I just can't keep reading out loud. I'm choking up too much because of these. Now, bear in mind, I am well known for my proclivity to cry and really get emotionally invested, but we did very much get emotionally invested. And with good reason. I mean, if you're at all familiar with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Aeon's End, Legacy of Gravehold, is basically Aeon's End Endgame. This is the culmination of a story that has been told for years through many, many chapters. And just like Infinity War and Endgame, it's bringing everything back and mixing them all up. All the characters we've ever, come to love or hate show up here with completely new takes on how they play and evolutions and continuations of the stories and what they represent in the overall thematic arc of the game. And, it is a very epic tale that's being told. Although, it's a simple tale too. I mean, this is not really going to be replacing Tolkien-esque literature or anything like that. It tells a simple story. It tells it very well. It's very engaging. If you are the type of player who, when you get a new boss, you read the small little print here to learn just a little bit more about them and where they come from, this game is going to take you so deep into this world and these characters. I mean, at times, maybe even a little bit too deep. I'll be honest, there was one time when, in between fights where there was one section I had to read and you're like, oh my gosh, this is War and Peace here. This is good. This is a little long. I mean, and this is one of the times I said, honey, maybe I can give my throat a rest and we can just read it side by side. It can get very long, but it's because there is so much love that has been poured into this game by the developers here. And it's just obvious with every page, every piece of art, every card, everything. And we love it to bits. So, a couple of interesting things, especially if you played the previous Aeon's End Legacy 1. One big thing that I think kind of mixed reviews. We really loved Aeon's End Legacy, that you completely created a character from scratch. And by the time you were done, your big burly character is very different than ours because of all the way it snapped together. They did not go that way this time. All the playable characters are existing characters from Storyline, that we're not making new characters from scratch. Every one of these characters right out of the gate is a completely fully fleshed out character who is standalone, does not need stickers or anything like that at all. But we do get to make slight modifications to them and watch them grow, or instead we can make modifications to our cards or our breaches or to the Gravehold, the cities we're defending themselves. We can move all kinds of modifications with stickers. Although, again, the important thing is after the campaign is over, it's not like, oh, well, I guess we'll just throw this away because we can't keep playing. This is a game that is designed to continue to play and mix and match with everything that has ever come before. I mean, these are all the cards that you can buy over the course of the game, that you unlock more as you go, as you do all the adventures. I sorted them out ahead of time. These right here, these are the cards that because of legacy stuff you can't keep using. So you still have all of this stuff that you will keep playing with after. So there's only a very small percentage of all of this stuff that won't continue to be things that you can just mix and match with everything. And it's all been great. We have enjoyed every boss. We are constantly delighted. Some are more far out. Some are a bit more straightforward. Some of them are kind of re-implementations or reimaginings of ideas that a game has experimented with before. Because with a game with this much content, of course, but still, we had a blast from start to finish. I won't go into the particulars of how of the legacy stuff because I don't want to spoil anything, but there are some very, very cool ideas. And what I will say is, with this many characters available to you as you play through a story, you might think, well, but yeah, isn't like every legacy game, aren't I just going to pick one and just play that character all the way through? Well, you might, and you can, but the game has other ideas, is all I'm going to say. And that stuff is very, very cool as well. You'll know what I'm talking about when you say it. If I had any complaint about our experience, I will be honest, it is literally just, it's going to be something unique to me and Jen because we played this prototype. With this prototype, all the bosses are blank on the increased difficulty option. This has always been standard. There's a standard way you can play the boss, or you can play the tougher boss. So we had to play all the bosses. Throughout the entire campaign, we lost once. And we realized afterwards that we made a mistake, and if we'd been a little bit smarter, we could have won that one. And we came close to winning once, but for the most part, we found it was a bit too easy. So I'm sure this won't be an issue. But if you're a diehard Aeon's End fan, skip playing these at regular difficulty. Play them at the increased difficulty. You will thank me because you want to ensure you get the full breadth of the experience because of some of the really cool new features that show up. My favorite one is the one that starts with the letter S. It's so awesome. And you might, if you're really good at Aeon's End and you play through just the standard difficulty, some of those features won't really come into play very much, and that's kind of a shame. And as we were like, man, I wish this was tougher. I wish this was beating us up more, because the way the game beats you up is really fresh and really interesting and really satisfying and has really huge implications for the overall story of the game as well. So that's one thing I just want to warn you. If you're a Aeon's End novice, I mean, this is a great place to start. To be fair, Aeon's End the Legacy 1, Aeon's End Legacy is the better place to start. And then you could skip all the content that's come in between and come right to this if you want. Although, again, if I go back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that's kind of like watching the first Avengers and then watching Endgame and skipping everything in between, because and it's fine. You can kind of understand what happens. Oh, those characters, and here they are a few years later, and oh, things are very different. But if you got to see all the chapters in between, it makes it so much sweeter when you see all these callbacks and references and stuff like that. And I've been through all of it, and we've loved all of it, so we've really enjoyed it on that level. But all of that aside, even if you don't care about story, you don't want to put stickers on stuff, the value proposition. This is all the new stuff. This does not include all the regular things like your sparks and your the basic cards and all of that. I mean, I've left those out. This is just completely new content, almost all of which is available for ongoing repeat play. And you've never gotten this much stuff. Yeah. I am flabbergasted. I don't know how they're going to top themselves. I keep coming back to Marvel. I feel the same way after Endgame. Where can the Marvel Cinematic Universe go after that? And I feel the same way. What can Aeon's End do now that they have done all of this? And I can't wait to find out. And in the meantime, I have got a whole bunch of new stuff for near endless replayability when all these things go back and mix and match with all the old favorites. And yeah, folks, it is absolutely spectacular. And that's the preview of Aeon's End, Legacy of Gravehold. Thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.